Right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Like in previous video, I promised a Greek mythology stream, and um, I am here and I'm here to deliver. So today we're going to be talking about the tale of Eros and Psyche, his lover Psyche, and his wife Psyche. Um, And this has really come about since the stream on Nathan CJ Hood's channel, who's in chat. Good evening, Nathan. Um, on the fall of Anakin Skywalker and the complexities around love and what it can do to an individual, what motivates them to do extremely, I guess you could say, good and also evil. Even though in both circumstances there is always the aspect of good intentions, especially with Anakin, as we discussed in that stream. Um, and I know Nathan, there's also been another stream on again the concept of love. I was debating because I was actually listening to um, I downloaded an audio book of the Silmarillion, and I wanted to go through the um, Beren and Luthien concepts. I might do that in another video, um, but again, there's kind of these unifying themes where you have an authority figure in all three of them. Usually, it's parents. I mean, in the Star Wars one, it's um, you know, some technocratic religious order and some technocratic government order, where if if found out, it would compromise the lovers' um, way of life. Um, so, but in this story, it's parents and um, parental approval, and there's tasks at hand which they must prove their worth. Um, So anyway, let's get into this. So I'm going to be reading to you. We're going to be going through this as we go along of the tale. Now, this is an excerpt from. Um, uh, there's been several variations of this. You have the classical Greek, you have the Roman, and it's been obviously republished, reproduced over the centuries. So this is from Margaret Hodge, retold by Margaret Hodge, the story of Psyche, and it's listed as the arrow and the lamp. You'll find the Google document on there. The reason I chose this was more aligned to the more sort of common tale from the Greek perspective. I wanted it to be more Greek orientated, as it's a tale that comes from that and um, has more, I think, greater importance. So let's start with, and just to for clarification, Eros, he is the Greek god of, um, he's the son of um, Aphrodite, and he is the Greek god of love and passion, and he's represented as a very handsome man with wings and a bow and arrow. In the Roman world, he is Cupid, effectively. So, with that being said, let's get started, shall we? Okay, so we start this tale. Once a king and a queen had three daughters. All three were beautiful, but the youngest, Psyche, was different. Her sisters were content to know what they were told. Psyche always wanted to know more. She was so lovely that men called her a new Aphrodite, a young goddess of love and beauty, but no man dared to marry a goddess. So while the two older sisters found husbands and went away to live in their own homes, Psyche stayed on alone with her father and mother. Now, all might have been well if golden, sweet smiling Aphrodite had not heard of Psyche. The goddess came up out of the sea to find out whether men were really leaving her temples empty and silent and throwing flowers in the streets where Psyche walked. And when Aphrodite saw that it was true, she no longer smiled, she was furious, and she said to herself, "This girl is mortal. Beautiful she may be, but like all mortals, she will die. And until she dies, she must never have a happy day. I shall see to that." Then she called her favorite child, Eros, and he came flying to her. This young god, as fair as his mother, had golden wings on which he moved swiftly and unseen on his mysterious errands, often doing mischief. He carried a golden bow and quiver filled with arrows. "Go to this girl, this Psyche," said Aphrodite. "Wound her with one of your arrows, pour bitterness on her lips, then find her the vilest husband in the world, mean, bad tempered, ugly, and make her fall in love with him." There were two springs of water in Aphrodite's garden, one bitter, the other sweet. Carrying water from both springs, Eros flew off invisible. He found Psyche asleep. Her beauty moved him to pity, but obeying his mother's command, he poured bitter sweet water on her lips and touched her side with one of his arrows. Psyche felt the pain and opened her eyes. She could not see Eros, but as he looked into her eyes, the arrow trembled in his hand, and by chance he wounded himself. He poured a little of the sweet water on her forehead and flew away. Still no lovers came to ask for Psyche's hand in marriage. So the king and queen, guessing that their daughter had somehow angered one of the gods, asked an oracle to look into the future and tell them what could be done to find a husband for her. The oracle answered with frightening words: "Dress your daughter for her funeral. She will never marry a mortal man, but will be the bride of a creature with wings, feared even by the gods. Take Psyche to the stony top of the mountain that looks down on your city and leave her there alone to meet her fate." Okay, so that's the first sort of part. What's quite interesting in this is and we've talked about this on this on I talked about this on Iron's Duke's channel last weekend, was that y- with women, uh, and if you've ever seen this in the workplace or in friend social groups or in public or something, there's this there's this unifying aspect of the older woman or the senior woman, usually old being older, having immense jealousy for the young and the pretty. And it demonstrates itself in actual very much vile bitterness. Of course, we think of tales such as Cinderella and um, the two twins and everything. Um, in this story, though, we'll find her sisters also harbor such bitterness. Her older sisters, um, but it's quite interesting that this particular theme is kind of because one thing that Aphrodite is, and you find this in all mythologies, that she's a very jealous goddess, um, very jealous, especially around love and beauty. And the discussion of what is love, and I said on Nathan's stream when he asked what is love, and I said, well, love is fanaticism, because in many ways, to have such an emotion for someone else requires that a level of fanaticism that you would see in um, um, it, it's a level of fanaticism that you would see, say, in a belief, in a strongly held belief. It's a strongly held emotion which binds you to another person, um, and it can exercise itself. In this case, it can exercise itself in irrational behavior, fear, jealousy, um, maybe even, yeah, and of course in the Star Wars context, it was very the whole thing was more on disapproved on by the Jedi was and banned was because of the concept of attachment, because it's inward looking. So anyway, we shall continue. When they heard this prophecy, all the people wept with Psyche's father and mother. But Psyche said, "Tears will not help me. I was doomed from the moment when you called me your new Aphrodite. I must be Aphrodite herself, who I have angered." Just a quick bit there, 'cause I will continue. It is quite interesting because in this story, she is, a young woman, and we see in other aspects, children or young people being idolized as godlike. And there are people who do get idolized as gods. Um, and and then we are surprised that they are, they don't act in such a way. Um, and the ultimate, the reason why Aphrodite, what angered her the most was that the people's love and affection was directed at her. The temples, as I said earlier, the temples were emptied, and they were treating her as a new goddess, even though she didn't really ask for it. The beauty was just I wouldn't say in this context luck, but it was just a gift bestowed um, on Psyche. Uh, so yeah, I'll just continue this. It must be Aphrodite herself whom I have angered. Obey the oracle before the goddess punishes all of you. I alone must bear her anger. Psyche led the way to the mountain top and said goodbye to her weeping parents and the crowd of folk who had sadly followed her. When all were gone, she sat down, trembling and afraid, to wait. But no monster husband came. Instead, the warm west wind began to blow, and raising her gently in the air, carried her down the far side of the mountain to a green and flowering meadow in a hidden valley. Psyche fell asleep uh, peace, peacefully in the soft grass. When she woke, she saw a grove of tall trees watered by a clear stream. In the grove stood a marvelous palace, its golden pillars topped with a roof of carved sandalwood and ivory. She entered through the open doorway, wondering at the light that flashed from silver walls. Surely only a god could have made such a palace. Psyche passed from room to room, walking on floors made of precious stones until she came to a marble pool filled with scented water. Then a voice spoke to her. "Lady, all of this is yours. Ask for whatever you like." Unseen hands led her to the bath and afterward clothed her in a robe of fine silk. A table appeared, spread with delicious food, and Psyche ate and drank while invisible servants waited on her, and the air was filled with the sound of sweet voices singing. When darkness fell, Psyche found a bed ready for her and lay down to rest. But in the night she woke, feeling the presence of someone standing beside her bed, and she was full of fear. Then a voice said, Do not be afraid, Psyche. I am the husband you have been waiting for. Trust me, no harm will come to you. Only do not try to see me. Psyche's husband stayed with her all night long. Before daylight, he was gone. For some months, Psyche lived in the palace, surrounded by beauty and comfort. The unseen servants answered all her wishes, her and hold on a sec, and when her unseen husband came at night, he was always kind. She began to long for the sound of his voice, and very days seemed empty, and she often felt lonely. One night her husband said to her, Psyche, your sisters are looking for you. If you hear them calling, do not answer. Psyche promised to obey, but she wished more and more to see a face. The clear waters of pool reflected only her own face, and the palace now seemed like a prison. At last, her husband found her uh, weeping, and taking her in arms, said, "Well, my love, have your wish, even if it brings trouble. The west wind shall carry your sisters here." And Psyche thanked him with grateful kisses. The next day she heard her sisters calling to her from the mountain top, and she called back to them. Then the west wind carried them down into the valley, and when they found Psyche safe and well, they embraced her joyfully. But their joy turned to jealousy as she showed them her palace, and they saw how she was dressed and waited on like a queen. When Psyche confessed um, that she had never seen her husband, they spoiled her with happiness by planting suspicion in her mind. If your husband will not let you see him, he must be the monster that the oracle said you would marry. He is only biding his time until he is ready to kill you. Take our advice. The next time he comes, have a lamp and a sharp knife hidden at your side. When he is asleep, light the lamp and look at him. If he is a monster, kill him while there is yet time. Um, and so this is quite interesting because in the story, there's a clear set of rules that Psyche must obey um, while living in this palace and in this this Eris's grounds, effectively in his domain. That she mustn't really wish to see others. She's unable to see the servants because they're invisible. And of course, the big one is that she isn't allowed to look upon his face at any cost. And the temptation, and this is something that you see a lot in Greek tales, is that there's always this give and take. And one thing is that the gods expect you must in the key moments you must put their trust and not give in to temptation. I'll do another stream on. It was about I can't remember the name, but it was a lover who went down to the underworld to Hades to get his beloveds back, and similar fate came down to trust. Um, but there's quite a key core theme of trust and obeying an agreement like this. And of course, you can probably guess where this is going because the jealous sisters, fill the mind of doubt on their younger sister. Um, you know, and the thing that is due to her sadness that she isn't able to socialize. Um, she very quickly, you know. um, finds herself willing to act out what her sisters have been sort of planted seeds of doubt in her mind. And planting seeds of doubt in someone's mind is very powerful, because while you may not convince, it's very rarely you can convince somebody in one moment, but there is an aspect of, um, from a purely um, practical point of view, it is kind of silly being married to someone and then them telling you not to see their face. Um, but at the same time, she's not just married to anyone; she's married to uh, a god, a non-mortal. Um, so the west wind carried the sisters away as safely as they had come, but Psyche was tormented by what they had said. At last she filled a little lamp with oil and found a sharp knife, both of which she hid beside her bed. That night she that night, when her husband was asleep, she lit the lamp and saw him, not a monster, but a most beautiful of beings, fair and graceful youth with golden wings, smiling even in his sleep. Psyche was moved by deeper love that she had ever felt. She bent over her husband, and from the lamp a drop of oil, burning hot, fell onto his shoulder. Stung by the pain, he opened his eyes and looked at her sternly. "Foolish Psyche," he said, "I knew how it would be. You could not trust me. You had to see for yourself. Now you will lose everything that I could give you, and I must lose you." Too late she knew who he was, Eros, the son of Aphrodite. There was a flash of golden wings, and he was gone. The palace too was gone, and Psyche found herself alone again on the mountain top. Psyche was determined to find her lost husband, but although she walked all the roads of the world, she could not discover where he was. He had flown to one of his mother's many palaces, sick at heart and feverish with the burning pain of the oil from Psyche's lamp. Aphrodite was angrier than she had ever been. "You are meant to make mortals fall in love, not to fall in love yourself," she said. "However, you will soon be well, and will forget all about this girl." She locked him into a chamber, and there he lay. As Psyche searched for Eros, she came at last to a fairway river that flowed from a high waterfall. At the edge of the river stood a temple, and in its doorway she saw Aphrodite. She knelt at the feet of the goddess and begged Aphrodite to tell her where she could find Eros. But Aphrodite, jealously of her beauty, answered with a false smile, "I will give you Eros back to you if you will do something for me." And when Psyche eagerly agreed, the goddess led her into the temple and showed her a room filled with great heap of grains, corn and barley, poppy, seed, lentils, and beans. I do like this bit. This is this is quite a good sort of punishment task, all mixed together. "Anyone as ugly as you is fit only to work," Aphrodite said scornfully. "Sort all these grains into separate piles and have it done by evening." Um, when the goddess had left her, Psyche sat down and began to cry. The task was impossible, but as she sat there weeping, she saw a procession of little ants coming out of the earth and running to her rescue. They attacked the heap of grains and carried each kind of separate pile, never stopping until the work was done. Then they vanished into the earth. When Aphrodite returned in the evening, she found Psyche sitting with folded hands All the work was finished. "You do not deceive me, wretched girl," cried the goddess. "Someone has helped you. Tomorrow you must work alone, but your task is easy. Across the river is a field where golden sheep are grazing. Bring me a strand of their fleece." At dawn, Psyche went to the river and stepped into the water. But as she did, she heard the whispering of the reeds that grew along the shore. "Psyche, the sheep are wild rams, as fierce as the sun's rays. They will batter you with their stony foreheads and pierce you with their sharp horns." Psyche was ready to sink down into the river, despairing, but the reeds whispered, "Do not give up, be patient, things will change, wait until the sun sinks. Then the rams sleep, and you can easily gather a strand of their golden fleece from the bushes along the edges of the field." Psyche obeyed, and in the evening gave a shining fleece to Aphrodite. So, as you can probably imagine from this, that in with the ants separating the grains from the beans and the golden fleece, that she is having this outside help. And one thing that in this, because Aphrodite is setting her a series of tasks, which is in many ways lessons, and the lessons in this is about obeying, obeying in the sense of obeying a hierarchical structure of what Aphrodite wants her to do, which she willingly renders herself to find her love. Um, but also, the tasks themselves, which it is quite impossible for a mortal to do, and so she um, is having help, as you'll find out from the gods, from the other gods, um, and one thing that I think she is being taught in this, especially with the rams, is patience. And that's something which is, and I think what sort of defines the whole story, because because of her youthfulness, one could say she's a very naive girl, that she, in the concept of relationship, she is still behaving in a way which is rather childish, and as Eros said, foolish. She calls her a foolish girl. And so this is, in some ways, it's molding her into a woman, um, though the final state is something quite different, as we will get on to. So, all right. The goddess was enraged. She could not bear to find Psyche still alive. "Tomorrow you must work again," she said. She gave Psyche a crystal jar and pointed to the waterfall, and plunged um, plunged from the mountain peak. "That is where the river Styx comes from, Hades, the land of death. Bring me water from the top of the waterfall," she ordered. She thought to herself, "The girl will never return. It's just a punishment for stealing my son's love." So yeah, at this point, she's sort of given up with her, and she just, she just wanted this as a sort of vindictive punishment um, aspect. Psyche made her way to the foot of the mountain and climbed the steep, rugged path up, up, on and on, fearing every moment that she would fall and be dashed to pieces. At last she reached the topmost crag, a rough and slippery rock, and saw that the torrent of water poured out of a cavern guarded by dragons with unwinking eyes. Psyche heard the waters roaring, "Beware!" and stood as if turned to stone by the fear. Then from high in the air above her there flew down an eagle, the messenger of Zeus, king of the gods. The eagle took the crystal jar in its claw and swooped past the dragons. It hovered at the top of the mountain of the waterfall until the jar was filled to the brim, then brought back down to Psyche. I do believe in this tale that if you know, Zeus is not very rarely known as a very helpful god, especially to women in this scenario. I do think that this is a in this story that certain gods, Zeus included in this, is just doing it to get one over on Aphrodite. So there's some sort of personal rivalry, which I find quite funny. I've always found quite funny, actually. um, that night, Aphrodite could hardly believe her eyes when she saw Psyche alive and well, bearing the jar of water in her hands. I have obeyed all your commands, says Psyche. I beg you, give me my husband. I have only one more task for you, said Aphrodite with a bitter smile. If you accomplish this, Eros shall be yours forever. Go to the world of the dead and ask Queen Persephone to fill this box, with some of her beauty, for she thought to herself, no mortal comes back from Hades. Psyche took the box. She knew now that Aphrodite wished nothing less than her death, and she climbed to a high tower, ready to leap to the ground, and so be taken at once to the land of the dead, never to return. But as she looked out from the top of the windy tower, a voice echoed from its walls. Psyche, do not lose hope. There is a way to accomplish the last of your labors. Near at hand, you will find a cave. A path leads through. A path leads through it to the river Styx. Carry 2 coins in your mouth to pay the ferryman who will row you across the river to Hades and back again. The three-headed dog guards the palace of Hades. Take 2 barley cakes for the dog. Give him one when you enter and the other when you leave. Um, Now, I do remember in one of my, as a child, I had these Greek sort of tales in sort of like a comic format, and I was just reading this because it just reminded me. I think in that one, it was Eros who was sort of helping her in this part from the side. You know, he was sort of like rooting for her um, um, through the his sort of his divine powers. You know, yeah, the voice, you know, the voice in the wind, the echo, um, the little hints. Um, but I don't know how it will play out in this tale. Maybe it's not mentioned, but if I remember correctly, he was the one that was sort of helping her a bit all the way through. Psyche found the cave and followed the dark path that led through it into the secret place of the earth. When she came to the river Styx, the ferryman took one of the coins from her mouth and rowed her across. When the fierce 3-headed dog of Hades barked at her, she silenced him with a barley cake and went on to the jeweled palace of Hades. There, Queen Persephone came to greet her, and when Psyche saw the gentle face, she knew why even Aphrodite wanted to have some of its beauty. The goddess took the box and put something into it, saying in a voice both soft and kind, "Do not open this, my child. It is not for you." Gratefully, Psyche took the box and ran from the palace. She gave her last cake to the 3-headed dog and her last coin to the ferryman and hurried up the path. But as she stepped out under the open sky, she thought, my husband once said that I was beautiful. He may no longer think so. After all my labors, perhaps I should keep a little of Persephone's beauty for myself. See, she's given back into temptation. Um, and again, you know, the thing though is it's when you have when she has this sort of divine power in her hands, she just can't, can't help herself to indulge in it, to take it. Um, she opened the box. At once a deep sleep came over her, and she lay as if dead. But even from afar, Eros saw her. He had recovered from his hurt and his love for her, and was strong that he burst open the locked doors of his chamber and flew to her, tenderly wiping away the spell of sleep. He closed the box and gave it back to her. Then, with Psyche in arms, he flew upward. As they neared the top Mount Olympus, the heavenly radiance shone brighter and brighter, and in the center of the light Psyche saw Zeus, the father of light. He called Aphrodite and all the other gods and goddesses together and spoke to them. See this mortal girl whom Eros loves. No mortal can have Persephone's beauty, but Psyche has brought some of that beauty to us. So give her the food and drink of gods, and let her be one of us, never to die, never to separate again from her love. Finally, even Aphrodite said it should be so. Then from Psyche's shoulder, uh, delicate wings like those of butterflies unfolded, and mortals seeing butterflies in summer fields remember that Psyche and her love. And okay, so let me go back over. And mortals seeing butterflies in summer fields remember Psyche and her love, and so that is the end. That is the end of it. Several versions do sort of elaborate on that, but she became, in many ways, a goddess in her own right. And I think, what's quite, I guess, the important thing of this is that this is, in a lot of tales, in a lot of stories that we like to think about, we see the character arc and development of a man, where he embraces maybe a warrior spirit or some sort of masculine solar spirit, um, where he, without sounding like a um, bit of a liberal, he finds himself um, in the sort of in the either in the battlefield or in the realm of war or politics. Um, in this instance, we see a very much a feminine version of this very naive girl who really didn't, due to her beauty, she pushed boundaries, and also the sort of fear of others' views, um, and bitterness. Um, she lost it, but her redemption was regaining that her husband, and regaining uh, um, that love, through tasks which, even though was set out to just to kill and to defeat, um, Psyche, but which Aphrodite set out, in many ways the tasks represent each fault with her: patience, obedience, um, and temptation. Ultimately, the final bit, which she did fail. Um, and I think the reason it's important she failed that is because, um, she was in possession of, quite literally, a divine, power of pure beauty, which even the gods wanted, in Olympus, from Persephone, the queen of the underworld. And it's important because it just remembers her as she is still in some ways mortal, in that she is not above reproach. And it takes Eros to sort of snap himself out of sadness and heartache, to come and rescue her, to release her from the internal sleep, and carry her up to Olympus, where she is effectively, she passes the trials, and she is awarded immortality, and she becomes this um in my mind, it's kind of a tale about a girl becoming a woman, um it through quite a bit of he- a heroic narrative in some way, um and it, it's also a tale of how a woman manages to out outgrow and avoids sort of the toxic aspects that femininity brings, jealousy, um sort of being non-obedient, breaking the rules, pushing the boundaries out. And so I think, that it's, for me, I think it's a on the concept of love, it's a very important tale, because of course it seems on the surface a tragedy, but actually it does work its way um out to a happy ending. Um of course, in in uh in other cases that we'll cover, that we covered with the Star Wars one, someone like Anakin, he gives in to his fears, and isn't patient, and he gives in to all those things that Psyche didn't, and he ends up losing it all, as we see. But I mean that is sort of my take on that. I hope everyone watching it enjoyed it. Um, so I'm just going to open up any questions in chat. There's 6 people on at the moment. I don't know if Nathan. Hi Connor, by the way, you've turned up. Good to see you here. I don't know if anyone else got any questions at all they want to ask me. Anything they want to raise from what. Uh, Anything from the story they want to raise, what anything they'd like to say that they've thought of, which I may have overlooked. I'll give you a few moments. Just gonna grab me drink. That's good. Yeah, I think the next one I'll be covering is Beren and Luthien. It's obviously quite considerably longer, and I think that would be um a a better one. I do know the story roughly around it, so but it's the details, it's um the sort of deeper conversations and um context behind the story, which I would like to listen to. Darth Calhoun, good listen. I say, if anyone's got any questions, please let me know now. I say I'll give you all a few moments. Oh, the other thing is, tonight I'll probably put it under in the description here. I am going to be releasing an article, short article, on my Substack, which I'll put a link to. I'm going to be talking about um, the Yellowstone meme that's been going around of Kevin Costner's character. Um, what was it, Dutton or something like that? And the the image of him leaning on his pickup truck with his cowboy the cowboy outfit, and saying very like sort of very critical of sort of boomer worldview of, I may not agree with um, trans liberation front marching through my local community, but I'll defend my rights with my guns and everything for you to indoctrinate my kids in school with such and such propaganda. Um, and I talk about it in quite a bit of detail. Really, really good one. Um, right, don't think anyone really has anything else to ask, so I will leave it at that. Um, well, thank you everyone for coming, people who are coming along, and for those who will, I know there'll be probably more people catching up. Thank you as well. And I I would like to um, do these sorts of things now weekly, have like these weekly streams, build up a bit more of a build up an audience again, build up a bit more of a profile, and everything else. So everyone like, share, and subscribe and all that sort of stuff. um, and I will see you all later. Thank you everyone for watching. And I'll see you in the next one. Good night.